Hey everybody, Assalamu alaikum. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the notify button so you know when you're getting new episodes. And we just want to grow this project. I thank you in advance. Without further ado, let's get it rolling. The Shout Out Show. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. This is me, host, Preacher Moss, Muslim Comedy OG. Listen, everybody, this is a really interesting day. Got some news that we knew about, some news that we just came online today. Of course, we had the eulogy of Congressman John Lewis today. And as I watched parts of that eulogy, man, I was really struck by several items. Number one, because the topic today is talking about cancel culture. And I want to say clearly that I learned the danger of cancel culture really watching this man over quite a number of years do some extraordinary work. When I say do extraordinary work, if you are John Lewis's age, or let's say if you're over 60, you grew up in cancel culture. The idea of Black identity, the idea of rights, really rights even for women, was canceled. And it had the forbearance of law, it had the protection of law. I have the legal wherewithal to treat you a particular type of way. So as I watched this eulogy today, all of them were great. You know, Bush was good, Clinton was good. Obama was very, very, very insightful when he talked about what that time period was. And it led a lot. It gave me a lot of insight. So I had some notes I wanted to talk about in terms of cancel culture. But you know what? Sometimes you have to be a little bit realistic. And sometimes you have to turn things over to people that give you insights and gems, morsels of information that just expand your whole thought. While we're in the middle of this idea of social justice movement, social justice reform, defund the police, all of these things are very, very important, but they're very, very pie in the sky-ish. We talk about them and we don't know as a group. I know as my group of people, my age group of people, we don't really know or don't have a whole lot of experience with how do we turn these things that are bad laws, how do we get them off the books? Like, how do we form ideology that goes to the Supreme Court? I'm trying to figure out what's the last bit of legislation that had to do with really Black Lives Matter and actually going to the Supreme Court and being argued. Now, when I say this, folks, I'm not meaning to be funny. When I'm saying it, I'm meaning to be that clearly something's amiss, because we've been getting a lot of information coming out, and the information has been, for lack of a better word, it's kind of been the same. It's kind of been the same. It's sort of like if you go to get your master's, but they're giving you information that you got when you got your bachelor's or high school or GED, there's something that's missing. And when I was watching Obama today talk about John Lewis, he reminded me of something, that we do have legends and we do have forefathers and pioneers, despite everything that happened in the United States, provided a pathway forward. And that is what I want to talk about today. That pathway forward that is being systemically and politically threatened by this whole thing in cancel culture. A lot of people think of cancel culture in terms of Me Too or George Floyd. I'm like, listen, it's way more intricate than that. You know, cancel culture is the reason why, you know, that Malcolm was assassinated. It's the reason why people took shots at Elijah Muhammad. It's the reason why they take shots at Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It's the reason why they take shots at Obama. Because in the cancel culture has been inherent for quite a number of years. So as we start this whole thing about talking about systemic racism, talk about cancel culture. You see, it wasn't so prevalent back then because you had laws that allowed you to cancel things. If I didn't want you to vote, I could do certain things to make sure that you didn't vote. If I didn't like the way you talked, I could affect things like where you worked, where you did your job, where you didn't do your job. I could affect those things. And people had in their mind winning formulas of how they could strategically frame how you lived your life. Let me give a shout out to my sister. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sister Layla. Miss you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. But my point here, and there's several points to be made, is that there are people who learn the system, if you will. They learn the system well enough that they could defeat the system. If you're talking about a John Lewis who died at age 80, understand, this was a very unique man. When I say unique man, it means that he developed a process with no protection of the law that carries over to the very day. Some of the things that we enjoy most, and I'm talking about DACA to fair housing, this is a machination of a man who looked out, didn't see it, but he saw it for everybody else. When I talk about cancel culture, it is the systems in place to make sure that you don't see them anymore. Things are set in a position, for lack of a better word, whereby you tend to look at the same things, and guess what? The same things cancel out each other. There's a rule that says you can't have two positives together, you can't have two negatives together, because they repel one another. That is cancel culture. One of my first experiences in reading up on cancel culture had to do with Martin Luther King. Not so much Martin Luther King, but it had to do with J. Edgar Hoover, who was a master, if you will, of cancel culture. What do I mean? They physically could not go and get Martin Luther King. They physically could not go and put a hand on Martin Luther King. And let me tell you why. That would have started an entire riot. What happened is they took the forces around Martin Luther King, the people who mattered most to him, the people in his space, and they infected those people. And they set up oppositional relationships with Martin Luther King. So that when he got to places of clarity, other people were like, you can't talk about that place of clarity. It's a very interesting thing. People talk about the NOI, a classic example of what? Cancel culture. They couldn't get to Malcolm X, so they created a format. They created an environment that allowed folks to develop their own quote-unquote thinking, but it wasn't thinking, it was manufactured to make sure that my ideas, my feelings, my perspectives, if you will, were absolutely 100% countercultural to yours. And they set the things in motion. Cancel culture was an interesting thing. They call it cancel culture. But what it is, and it's a Freudian slip, it's really cancer culture. Let me say that again. It's really cancer culture. Because cancer is something that grows and metastasizes. It means that it spreads throughout. If you kill the one individual or took the one individual out, you can find another one. But when you have a cancer, it spreads to other aspects of the operation, other aspects of the movement, other aspects of the religion, other aspects of ideology, and it affects them. It may not kill them, but it definitely, brothers and sisters, affects their functionality. I'll give a shout out to Sister Ree. What's going on, Ree? All the way from Indonesia. Walaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How you doing? I'm doing well, hanging in there. E. Kareem. Oh, for all my brothers and sisters. E. Kareem. E. Mubarak. For everybody, I know this is a day of Arafat, so please enjoy it. For those who are fasting, may Allah continue to bless you. I'm trying to get through my fast now. I'm actually going to bring up a little something from this speech, if you will. Allow me to engage a little bit, brothers and sisters. And, I just want you to listen through the mind in the speech of former President Obama. Listen to how he talks about John Lewis. And I want you to pull certain things out of what he's saying. John Lewis was a master at manipulating cancer culture. All right, check it out.
And we know what happened to the marchers that day. Their bones were cracked by billy clubs, their eyes and lungs choked with tear gas. They knelt to pray, which made their heads easier targets. And John was struck in the skull, and he thought he was going to die. Surrounded by the sight of young Americans gagging and bleeding and trampled. Victims in their own country of state-sponsored violence. And the thing is, I imagine initially that day, the troopers thought they'd won the battle. You can imagine the conversations they had afterwards. You can imagine them saying, yeah, we showed them. They figured they'd turn the protesters back over the bridge. That they preserved a system that denied the basic humanity of their fellow citizens. Except this time there were some cameras there. This time the world saw what happened, bore witness to Black Americans who were asking for nothing more than to be treated like other Americans. Who were not asking for special treatment, just equal treatment, promised to them a century before, and almost another century before that. And when John woke up and checked himself out of the hospital, he would make sure the movement that was, in the words of Scripture, hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. They returned to Brown Chapel. A battered prophet, bandages around his head. And he said, more marchers will come now. And the people came. And the troopers parted. And the marchers reached Montgomery. Their words reached the White House. And Lyndon Johnson, son of the South, said, we shall overcome. And the Voting Rights Act was signed into law.
So you can begin to see a lot of what I'm talking about. I would also add this to everybody. In the times that we are now, the idea of talking about cancel culture is so important. It's so important because we've already gone through it, but in many regards, we don't know we've gone through it. Let me tell you it again. If you break down what Obama was saying, they talk about people who felt like they had protection of the law, and that protection of the law allowed them to cancel out certain things. It allowed them to treat people a certain way. Here we are in the United States, and we're still allowing folks to cancel us, if you will. Cancel us on fair health, cancel us on fair housing, cancel us on employment, cancel us on religious expression, cancel us on where we want to live, or cancel. But we have a blueprint of how you win against people who want to cancel you. The people who want to cancel you live in this space, brothers and sisters, that somehow they can do no wrong. Because when you cancel somebody, it is a certain type of finality. Can you believe maybe 100 years ago, 150 years ago, there are people who thought that black people couldn't go to school, Latinos couldn't be citizens, women couldn't be presidents, VPs or possibly presidents. Nobody ever thought that those feelings and those emotions, those aspirations could happen. But here we have a certain situation. Again, looking at where we are at this particular point in time. Whether you're religious or not religious, I believe there's only one person or one entity that can cancel anything that has to do with me. Unfortunately, you have people who think that they are that entity. You heard me yesterday talk about man babies, who I thought were man babies. And I ran down a whole bunch of people. I called President Trump a man baby. I called Tom Cotton a man baby. I called Attorney General William Barr a man baby. I said, because these men are babies who can only keep that ideology by trying to make everybody else babies. What Obama just talked about, for lack of a better word, brothers and sisters, is men. He talked about men being men and women being women and seeking a certain level of opportunity and access. Because I personally understood King. King didn't want to be equal to white folks. Because back in the 60s, is that what you really want to be equal to? Clearly, you're at a different moral space, a different spiritual space. I don't want to be like you. There's no need. There's something in my system that tells me we can't operate together. Something's been put in my spirit that says that my spirit is definitely different than yours, or how about this? My spirit, brothers and sisters, is one you don't have. You don't have a spirit to talk about. So when you talk about cancel culture, brothers and sisters, the dangers of it is it gives this weird situation, a very sleepy type of existence that somehow, somewhere, people have this control over you, that they can say something and move forward. I understand it's about cancel culture. It removes the ideology of due process in most cases. It means that I can bring to bear my emotions. I can bring to bear what I believe, but I don't necessarily have to bring to bear a valid argument. When I say a valid argument, it means you tell me what it is the problem is, and then you state your case, and then you argue your case. In many cases, people aren't stating their cases. They're not arguing their cases. In America, we have a thing called American exceptionalism, which means it doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong. As long as I'm American, I'm good. Where does that come from? Of course, white supremacy. Doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong. As long as I'm white, I'm right. Now, this is not to get on a racial track or anything like that. That's not it. This is a very difficult conversation because a lot of people are walking around understanding that they don't understand. They have no idea what I'm talking about right now because it's couched in so many different things. I always say the thing about cancel culture is it always does an incredible job of making sure that you don't ask the critical questions. All right? You don't ask the critical questions. Those things don't come into that space of discussion. And the discussions, 9 times out of 10, we talk about canceling. The people who are having the discussions are making sure that you are not in that place to defend yourself or offer any type of alternative point of view. That's dangerous. That's extremely dangerous. Imagine me as a comedian, I went after somebody. I got on this platform or another platform and I blasted this person. And I didn't do my research. I was going strictly off emotion. Let's just say I was lying, brothers and sisters. Cancel culture means I have to figure out a way to realign the argument to make sure the person that I harmed, the person that I slandered, can't get into a public space and argue about what I said. What does that mean? You look around these days and we're in these particular situations and predicaments because we don't know, for lack of a better word, how to deal with the fear, if you will, in many cases of being canceled. In our own Muslim community, people are scared to death about being canceled. Not being scared to death about being canceled in the mainstream. I'm talking about in our own communities. We practice our own type of silencing in our own communities. This blessed ummah, we do the same thing. So cancel culture is not white supremacy. Cancel culture is in our communities when we don't even see white people. It has so much to do with intentions in the act. And I'm going to say something because this is their artifact. Cancel culture, brothers and sisters, in a weird way, undermines the process of sacrifice. It means that a person can speak or say something, but they haven't sacrificed anything. They haven't put skin in the game to be able to talk at a certain level. It means that I can snipe you. I can, especially during this whole time of social media. I've seen scholars take brutal beatings on social media, and we don't know where they came from. Somebody popped up a website. Somebody put up an Instagram. Somebody put up a tweet. And the worst part about it is we cancel ourselves. We're not listening to one another. And that's a scary thing. I would advocate that everybody, if you get a chance, read John Lewis's comic book. Read his comic book. Now, this is the man in the advanced age. He came up with a comic book, and this is the genius. He understands that he's got to speak to the youth. Even though he's in his mid to late 70s, he had to speak to the youth. Because youth are the last bastions of free will. Let me give a shout out. But Sean, thank you for coming on the show, brother. And we have to be able to focus and say these things, not just to one another, but we have to admit our mistakes. The last thing about cancel culture that I really want to get on, it allows people to say things, but they don't have to say they're sorry. They can ask for forgiveness. And I hate this, brothers and sisters. Just as a practicing Muslim, I hate this whole idea that people say, you know what? I repented for my sins. Good. That's between you and God. But the other part of it is you have to redeem yourself. You have to redeem yourself. Meaning, philosophically, you have to go back and all the people that you've harmed, you have to figure out a way to make them as close to whole as you can before you said something. We don't believe in redemption in the United States. Watch your president. He lies, he misleads, he never apologizes. He lies, he misleads. Now these are characteristics of that man baby I talked to you about. But let me tell you about cancel culture. That last piece is he's figured out in his mind that nobody is worthy of redemption unless he gives it to them. Therein lies a space where you don't have to worry about mercy coming from the White House. You don't have to worry about compassion or rationale or the racists or the extremists because they're all eating out of the same soup can, if you will. What they've counted on is you will get to a point where you don't think that you're worthy of redemption or that they're going to run the clock out on you thinking that if they don't give you, brothers and sisters, they don't give you an apology, they'll wait you out. Now I'm gonna share something. You know, OG told me. My mentor, Dick Gregory. I'm gonna put that up, brother. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man. Dick Gregory told me something several years ago in DC after a show. And what he told me was, one of the things you have to do is stay diligent. And I asked him why. He said, the reason you have to stay diligent is the powers that be know that you're going to be effective for a certain amount of time. He said, but they also know that the audiences And the demographics are going to change around you. And your effectiveness is going to change. And people who used to hear you, they're not going to be around anymore. Now, this is a man that lived to be 84 years old, still doing stand-up. He said, most of the people in my audience don't remember when I ran for president. They don't remember the book I wrote, nigger. He said, they don't remember that stuff. They might remember the diet stuff, the Dick Gregory Bahamian diet. He said, be careful because your enemies are patient. He said, they are willing more times than not to run out the clock. When I say run out the clock, meaning what, brothers and sisters? They are willing to wait you out. And how can they wait you out? As I told you before, it's not that they wait you out, but they put laws that are going to exist way after you're gone, just like they existed way before you came. John Lewis, my hat's off to you. I am a student, and I am an appreciative student. All of us should be appreciative students. Now, before we go, I want to make sure I give that, but I'm also going to give a shout out to somebody who just passed away today. I'm not going to sit up and tell you that I liked his politics or anything like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you that I respected what he did as a business person. Herman Cain actually passed away. Herman Cain ran for president back in 2012, didn't win, whatever. Weird part is, he attended Trump's rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This guy was a cancer survivor, 74 years old. And he passed away. Now, why am I bringing this up? A prime example of cancer culture. Here's a guy who at one point on his website told everybody to wear a mask. But he canceled that. And he went to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he didn't wear a mask. And he contracted COVID-19. And he's no longer with us. Clearly, he wasn't talking to, or clearly he wasn't looking at the examples that are out there. But you would think, historically, he would look around at the evolution of Black people, the struggles and the oppression we went to, and understand sometimes you just got to tell the truth, even if it makes you alive. Brothers and sisters, I appreciate you. Check the message out before we go. Don't forget, on Saturday, August the 1st, brothers and sisters, I'm celebrating the 100th consecutive episode of the ShOUT Show. Now, let me tell you what that means. 100 consecutive episodes, which means that from April 24th to this show right now, we have done 98 episodes. Now, I'm not saying everybody had to be on the episodes. That's not it. But it's the idea that you have to have a goal. You have to have a purpose. We were never canceled. We were never challenged. But we were inspired by people like Obama, by people like Dick Gregory, by people like Minister, by people like Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, Nelson Mandela, Fannie Lou Hamer. We can go on and on and on and on and on. It's wonderful to be empowered. Let me give this to my sister. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Thank you. I appreciate you, big sis. But I want everybody to know, we're doing this show. It's the 100th show. I thought about getting a big guest, But you know what? I think I'm going to make you people the guests. I think I'm going to have you on because a lot of you in my comment, you're in the chat section. I think I'm going to give you a link and I'm going to bring you on. I'm going to interview you and I'm going to find out what's going on with you and what you like about the ShOUT Show, what you don't like about the ShOUT Show. Because this is a family program. This is not a fame program. This is not a fan program. This is a family, a community talk, a community forum, if you will. So I'm going to get out of here. I hope everybody's going to have a blessed Eid in advance. Eid Mubarak, everybody. And pray for me, pray for my family, and I'll do the same for you. All right, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hey everybody, this is your brother Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed your ShOUT Show experience. We'll be back with the next show, the next ShOUT Show. A simple ask before you go, please help your brother out. Click that subscribe button, click that notify button, and I'll see you again on this side of the microphone. You probably wonder what that smell is. That's me. I smell good. And the reason I smell good is because I use oils from Tarifa Tar. So I'm not saying you can't smell good. I'm not even saying you stink. I'm saying you have the opportunity to smell exquisite. Check out tarifatar.com for some of the best oils and scents in town.